Hey everyone, Mario again, coming at you with another video. Today, it is a review of the special features for Shout Factory's Blu-ray release of John Carpenter's 1982 classic, The Thing. Like always, it has the two different posters, but I'm more partial to the classic one than I am their new one. It's one of the few they've done where I like the new one, but I prefer the original. For those of you who don't know, that's what the new art looks like. Since I pre-ordered, I do have it on a poster somewhere, but I'm lazy. I don't want to get it down. I really want to get a poster of that too. It'd be nice, someday have them on the wall back to back. Not back to back, like side to side, or put one on one wall, one on the other. It'd be a down the road thing. Anyway, as a fan of this film, I could not help but get this release, even though I already have the special edition DVD. Which I have to say, the worst thing about this DVD is that poster. That poster is crap. Doesn't really sell as much as that or the new art. Now, if you are a fan who has this, note that this one does carry over features from this one. It carries over the John Carpenter's The Thing, Terror Takes Shape documentary, which is a pretty good documentary. I did not rewatch it for this video, because I remember a majority of what is mentioned in it, and I remember it being a pretty good documentary. So if you have this and haven't watched it, watch it. If you're going to get this, definitely one of the first things you should watch. It has the stop motion, work in progress, visual effects footage, and the behind the scenes location footage. And this one also has the vintage product reel, which contains a condensed version of the film with alternate footage. Some alternate footage, but then a lot of the more special effects heavy shots are cut. And since it's like only about 20 minutes, there's a narration at the beginning, which I'm glad they did not put that in the final film. That would have killed it. And I fast forwarded through a lot of it at one point because it's like, okay, I'm just gonna see how this is paced. You add a couple more stuff. It could have been an interesting little short film experiment, but it's nice. I'm gonna guess that it's probably like a thing to show the investors how the film is coming along in the editing stage, or maybe to compile some footage to see if they have to add anything else, or how the film's pacing is going thus far. That's my guess. It has more behind the scenes footage, has production art, which I just fast forwarded through that, but it was interesting to watch. If there's one thing definitely, obviously, because of the different formats, the picture is a lot more clear on this than it is on this. And since I have never watched this film in HD, watching it again, it was interesting to watch the film in HD. I noticed some more stuff. It's like when I did that theater experience video about when I saw Jurassic Park on the big screen in 3D. It was noticeable like that, though that was a bit more because that was a jump from watching it all the time on VHS to watching it in theaters in a 3D conversion, so I'm going to notice some things a lot more. This one, it was just like subtle things. And when I watched it with the commentary with director John Carpenter and actor Kurt Russell, which is a carryover from this one. And it's actually a pretty good commentary. I'm surprised I hadn't listened to it before, and I actually kick it myself. I haven't listened to him yet, but there's some other commentary. There's commentary with Dean Cundy, who also supervised the 2K scan of the film, so that explains why the film looks so good. It's going to be interesting when I get around to listening to that. I'll probably put some notes in the video description of this video, but the one with Carpenter and Russell is very interesting. Probably one of the most interesting notes they mention in the commentary is when the film, as the film's going on, is when it switches from a location shot to a studio shot and back. And watching it with that, I'm like, oh, I would have never noticed that. I would have guessed some of them, but then some of them would have been like, that's a studio shot, or that's not a location one. I thought it was the other. It's interesting. And then they mention, the order that they filmed it. If I remember right, I think it went studio, then on location. So the film obviously was filmed out of order, but how they were able to match the lighting and all that shows that the people who were making this film with Carpenter really knew what they were doing. Shows just how much of a piece of art it is, and since he mentions it in the commentary, why the people who crapped on the film when it was released were wrong, calling him the pornographer of violence. Really? Things like Martyrs are more like the pornography of violence. New features on disc 2 are things like interviews with the cast and crew, which is a pretty good interview. You got most of the cast in there. It's the actor one that was the first one, and even got Wilford Brimley in there, which he's really starting to look his age. The one that passed away is not in there, obviously. The only actor who's still alive who is not in this, which disappointed me, was Kurt Russell was not in that. That's why I wondered as I was going through the features, or the features with him carryovers from the DVD, and that's what it looks like. Makes me wonder, was he not available to do the features? Was it the situation where they contacted his agent and his agent said the same thing to them that he said when he was called to play Church in Expendables? Oh, he's not interested. If so, I want to know if that's his agent or if that's from Russell. And again, with how Russell talks about the film on the commentary, I don't see why he wouldn't do it, other than scheduling not permitting it. I know if it was me, I would be kicking myself, or it's like, dang, they're doing a new special feature. And again, if it was that, I'd invite him over to my house on days that I had off and do it, but that's just me because I'm a nice guy. Let's see, looking at the other features. It doesn't mention them all on the back, so I'm trying to remember off the top of my head what other ones were. There's ones involving the sound, ones involving some of the special effects like the model work. The one that I was surprised but did interest me was one with Alan Dean Foster, the king of sci-fi movie novelizations. And from this, I did not even know that this movie had a novelization, which, on a side note, this is one thing I always found weird. You take a movie that is an adaptation of a literary source, be it a novella, novel, or short story, and you make a novelization out of it. Why? I mean, I understand it from a little bit of a point because you're trying to hype up the movie, but if it's already based on a literary source, why not just re-release the original source with like a cover with movie art? I mean, they do that in some cases, but for this it's like, why? Especially when this film is a very faithful adaptation of the original short story, Who Goes There? And there's some differences, but it's a lot more faithful than the original film from what I hear. The most interesting thing that they mention is that Alan Dean Foster has a connection to the original author of Who Goes There, whereas he had him read his first novel and gave him notes, like he said, some he took, some he didn't, he kept sending it back, and eventually these notes helped him get published. And then of course he mentioned that how as a novelization author, what you usually work off of, like he mentioned for The Thing, all he had was one of the scripts. He didn't have any photos or any film reels, so he just going by the script, which explains some of the differences, like character names, like there's no characters named Windows, that came from the actor. Differences in plot at points. I don't remember all of them because I actually looked them up after the featurette was done. The main one is the ending. The ending is a lot more complex in the original script than it is in the ending. And from what I've read, I prefer the ending that they did. It's a lot more ominous, but the original ending would have been interesting to see on film. It involved, basically is, if you were to take a scene from Aliens, you know, swap out differences in setting, time period, and characters, the scene where they're in the one room before the aliens burst through, it'd be like that with The Thing, which that would have been interesting. Obviously they're not going to have pulse rifles and other stuff, but in the Antarctic, that would have been very interesting. I wonder if we would have still got Kurt Russell's famous line, "Oh yeah, and fuck you too." That would have been a good place to put it, but you know, that's a what if. There's that feature with the stop motion animation that was rejected mostly. There is a couple moments of it in the final film, and watching it by itself, I could see why it was rejected, because as they put it, you're going from one type of fake, you know, practical models and all that, they're full size, to stop motion, and it moves a little bit different. Which I understand that, but if they had kept it in the film, it would have given the monster a little bit of a more otherworldly appearance for a moment. And they had a little bit of a feature talking about Marconi's score, and that Carpenter liked it for the most part, but he felt that it needed something a little bit more his style for the opening, which is why that opening bass one does kind of sound like Carpenter scored it, and you think he scored it until you see music composed by Marconi. It's like, oh, he did it. And it makes me wonder if some of the ones that Carpenter rejected were the ones that Marconi ended up using in The Hateful Eight, or if it's ones that Marconi composed early on and then like, nah, it doesn't fit this scene, doesn't fit this scene. Now, one of the things on disc 2 that I really, when I saw it was on there, ooh, I gotta watch this, and unfortunately I fell asleep during part of it, but just from what I remember watching and then what I woke up during, I got the gist of it, and that is it contains a network TV broadcast of The Thing. Now, from what I'm watching, I'm going to assume that this is the version that they mentioned on IMDb that John Carpenter disowned. It says on IMDb that this version no longer exists, but if this is that version, that's obviously a lie. Unless it means it no longer exists, as in that the networks no longer broadcast it. Instead, they broadcast a more approved, edited version of it. And watching this, I can see why Carpenter would not approve of this. Like a lot of TV versions of films, it does have some extended scenes, and with how they chop up other parts of the film, it does balance out the pacing a bit more. But if you were to put those scenes back in the full version, it really would disrupt the pacing of the scene. Like some of the added scenes in the scene where Blair's explaining to them what the thing is, they kind of hurt the pacing of the scene, and I can understand why they were cut. Other little moments like Bennings, I think it is. Bennings, when he comes inside and sees someone's run, that does slow it down. Apparently that was supposed to be right before he gets offed, and then they find his body, which, since he becomes a thing instead of getting killed like that, which is uncharacteristic of the Thing, that's something they mention in one of the features. I can see why they cut that. Putting in the TV version, it's ominous and makes you wonder, okay, which one of these guys is the Thing a little bit more. But then it's put in the film in such a jarring place, it's like, huh? But with how the film plays out, because it does darken for a split second at the moments where it would have cut to commercial and then cut back, and it's at the part where it would have cut back, so it's like, okay, that's why they stuck it there. And watching it, it's like, the biggest jar edit thing is that you don't see a lot of the special effects, which some of them I can understand because this is a network broadcast one, even though a film like this you should be showing later in the evening, so you should probably be able to get away with a little bit more, but still, it's like, it really hurts it. I know there's that thing that sometimes what you don't see is more powerful than what you do see, but for this film, I'd say you throw that out the window because you do need to see it. Though having seen the film a bunch of times, I know what's being not shown, so it's like, okay, I see with that edit. And there were some funny little edits like you can expect with language. The only one that sticks out to mind is one that the child says. I think it's, if I remember right, the original line has him say motherfucker instead, or something else, something along that, but the line that is substituted is monkey business. I just thought that was a little funny. And also other stuff is, of course, the infamous narration over the characters when they're introduced, describing their stuff. It's like, really, you had to make that really obvious by adding a narration? You couldn't have left it just as subtext, like it would work better, or actually let the film explain it as it go on. You had to really hammer it home for the audience. That's about it to talk about. It is a pretty good collector's edition. If you are a fan of this film and do not have this film in any shape or form on a collector's edition, definitely get it. If you have this DVD and have been hesitant about whether you want to get the Blu-ray or not, I say for the new features in the broadcast version and also the added picture, it is worth that alone.